Fox News alert, new questions for the Attorney General, Eric Holder, as congressional investigators deepen their look into whether Mr. Holder lied to Congress under oath. Brand new hour here of America Live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Two leading members of the House Judiciary Committee today sending a letter to the AG demanding that he clarify parts of his testimony from a hearing on May 15th about possible overreach by his Justice Department when it comes to investigating leaks, and more particularly investigating members of the press who receive leaks. The letter, signed by committee chairman Bob Goodlatte and Wisconsin Congressman Jim Sensenbrenner, asks Mr. Holder a litany of questions about the DOJ's dealing with the press, including how Mr. Holder had signed off on a warrant naming our own Fox News' James Rosen as a possible criminal co-conspirator, and having that knowledge nonetheless appeared before Congress on May 15th and testified this way.
With regard to the potential prosecution of the press for the disclosure of material, that is not something that I've ever been involved in, heard of, or would think would be a wise policy.
Joining me now, Wisconsin Republican Jim Sensenbrenner. Congressman, great to see you again. So your thoughts on whether there is a potential perjury charge looming for the Attorney General here?
Absolutely there is, because Michael Isikoff, after that hearing, disclosed that the Justice Department signed a affidavit to get a search warrant from a judge that accused James Rosen of possibly violating the Espionage Act, or at least being aiding, abetting, or being a co-conspirator. That's really chilling with the press, because if somebody leaks classified information, even though it might not be labeled as such, if a reporter does his job, then he can be either named a criminal or a co-conspirator. And if there ever was an assault on the First Amendment and freedom of the press, this is it.
I know it's chilling, and I see the controversy in what Mr. Holder did, but accusing him of possible perjury, of lying under oath before Congress, takes it to another level. And indeed, the top Democrat on the committee, John Conyers, came out and said Mr. Holder did not mislead the committee, and there is no need, I'm quoting, to turn a policy disagreement into allegations of misconduct.
Well, Mr. Conyers is the one that's being partisan on this. You just played Holder's response to a question asked by Democratic Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia. Now, we didn't know about the search warrant, but he said that he'd never heard of it, thought it was a bad policy, and yet Mr. Isikoff has replied that he signed off on this search warrant a couple of years beforehand. Now, that is misleading Congress. Whether it's perjury or not, I guess depends upon how Mr. Holder answers the questions that Chairman Goodlatte and I have requested him to do so. And we want to have an answer no later than Wednesday of next week, June 5th.
He told you in that soundbite we just heard, he had never heard of nor been involved in the potential prosecution of journalists in these leak cases. And yet, just to show the viewers what Mr. Holder reportedly signed off on, according to Isikoff of NBC, as well as the Daily Beast, which had an interview with Holder from the look of it, that was published earlier this week. This is what the U.S. Attorney alleged, the FBI alleged, to get the search warrant against James Rosen, something that Holder would have known if he signed off on it. So he tells you, I've never had any involvement in it, I have never heard of it ever happening. And look at what the FBI alleged in the thing he signed off on, according to the reports. Number one, there's probable cause to believe that the reporter, James Rosen, has committed or is committing a violation of the Espionage Act as an aider, abettor, and or co-conspirator. And then he goes even further and says, because of the reporter's own potential criminal liability in this matter, we believe that requesting the voluntary production of the materials from him would be futile, and he goes on from there. So he specifically goes on to say, this FBI guy, that Rosen has got potential criminal liability, and yet Holder told you he never even heard of potential prosecution of a journalist for disclosures.
Well, if that isn't misleading Congress at minimum, I don't know what is. But even if you accept Mr. Conyers' explanation that Holder did nothing wrong, he's not in charge of his department. He's lost the trust of Congress, and I submit the American people as well, and he ought to resign forthwith.
He's come out, and through these press reports, we hear his state of mind today, in particular the Daily Beast report, saying that, first of all, the gravity of the situation didn't really sink in until he read the Washington Post story about what he did to Rosen, that he's beginning to feel a creeping sense of personal remorse on this, that the message now out of DOJ is, look, we get it, we understand, that Holder sees this as a, quote, kind of teaching moment, and that his own personal soul-searching has already begun. Is that sufficient?
Megyn, it's a teaching moment because he got caught, purely and simply. These warrants were issued in 2011. There was an indictment returned against Mr. Kim for espionage, and Rosen was stated in the indictment as an unindicted co-conspirator. He was an unindicted co-conspirator simply because he was doing his job. And that's what the press is supposed to do. It doesn't make any difference whether it's a Fox News reporter or somebody who gets on MSNBC. The press has got a job to do, and it's obvious that Rosen was trying to get to the bottom of this. I've been on the Judiciary Committee for my entire 35 years in Congress. I have worked with 11 attorneys general, including Mr. Holder. Nobody has gone so far as what Mr. Holder's department has done. Now, either he knew about it, in which case he lied, or he didn't know about it, in which case he's not in control of his department, and I think he ought to resign.
Do you believe he's an honest man?
I had a very good relationship with him when he was Janet Reno's Deputy Attorney General during the Clinton administration. There obviously has been a change in his method of operation, and that's got to come from the top.
He is now going to meet with reporters and investigate his own behavior. I mean, he wants to hear from us on whether he's behaved badly and whether they need to change the guidelines in terms of investigating press and so on. Is that going to stop the bleeding? I mean, is that going to stem the tide of this controversy in your view?
No, it won't. And one of the things we've seen from this administration is when they get caught doing something bad and that's bad policy, they come back and say they want to change the law. Well, if the press shield law that they're pushing now is the same as the one they pushed in the last Congress, that would not have covered this situation. The Justice Department would still be able to do to some future reporter what it did to James Rosen. Simple as that. So I think this is a smokescreen, and I think this is false remorse.
I know you want a prompt reply. That's what you've asked for in this letter. I mean, do you expect to get one? And if you don't get one, what's your next move?
Well, the next move, I think, would be subpoenaing Holder to come before the committee. You may recall that this was the same committee that found him in contempt of Congress, which the House approved, but the Justice Department is now in court trying to get their boss cited for contempt of Congress. If they continue to blow us off on this one, the only real alternative is a special prosecutor or an independent counsel. That's what happened during Watergate. I don't think this rises to the level of Watergate yet, but I think the only way the American public will have any kind of faith in what happens following an investigation is that it is done outside the Justice Department, and the ultimate boss is not Eric Holder or his boss, the President of the United States.
Representative James Sensenbrenner, thanks so much for being here, sir.
Thank you.
All the best.